Well, it's been a tough week for Labor, losing the election in 31 MPs. Its vote slashed almost in half. And what follows are hard questions.
Like, should Chris Hipkins stay on as leader? How can they rebuild and what went so wrong? I asked outgoing Deputy Prime Minister Carmel Sepuloni whether the magnitude of the loss had sunk in yet.
I think it has. That doesn't mean that we won't go through all the stages of the grieving process, I think, over the course of the next couple of weeks. But this is the nature of things. I've been around a little while. I've been in elections that we've won and in elections that we've lost. And so this is just part of what we signed up for.
Part of that grieving process is blame. Chris Hipkins acknowledged that he had a slow start to the campaign. Is some of the caucus blaming him?
No, not at all. And in fact, I think the important thing is that going into this election, we did have unity within our caucus. It's a different feel from some of the other caucuses I've been in over the course of time, to be honest, Simon. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't sit down and review what happened, but it wasn't a bloodbath like we saw, say, 2014, where it was a 7-hour caucus after that election. That certainly wasn't the case.
So the knives weren't out in caucus this week at all?
No.
OK, and did you say, when you say unity going into caucus, you mean unity going into caucus this week, that you wanted Chippy to stay on as leader? Oh,
we had a unified caucus throughout the period of time, so throughout the term leading up to the election, during the campaign. No decisions have been made on leadership at this point in time. I think it's really important. What Chippy said is that actually you've got to wait until the full caucus is in, because we don't know who is in and who is out necessarily until November the 3rd. And so you have to wait for that particular group of people to make the decision.
But it's not going to change very much. So is caucus unified behind Chris Hipkins?
Right now, he's still the Prime Minister of this country, so of course we are unified behind him. And he is still the leader of the Labor Party. Any decisions for the future have to be made by the caucus that won't be confirmed until November the 3rd.
Do you believe him when he says he still has fight in him?
Yeah, I do. I've known Chris since 2008 when we got in, and as a backbench MP, working with him as a whip, seeing him as leader, he certainly does still have fight in him.
He looked pretty broken on election night, you must admit that.
I think it's fair and reasonable that some of us might have been a little bit tired off the back of that campaign and off the election night and election result, but that doesn't mean that the fire's not there, and perhaps some of us just need a little bit of time to rejuvenate after that.
Right, OK. You obviously will be doing the introspection of what went wrong. It was a walloping, a massive, almost half of support disappearing. Was that the policies that you tried to get over the line? Things like GST or fruit and veg, it didn't resonate. It was disliked by the Finance Minister. Was that a major mistake for a major policy?
I think it's a combination of things, and this is where actually reviewing what happened is going to be really important. I do want to note as well that off the back of the pandemic, many governments internationally have struggled to get re-elected, given what their population, their constituents kind of encountered and felt during what has been a very difficult period.
Does that mean that you are saying that the pandemic and your handling of the pandemic and the results of the pandemic
I'm saying
are a reason that you're not in power now?
I think that is a consideration. I do not think it is the sole reason, Simon, and I never would. But I would say this is what we're seeing internationally. It is part of the experience, I guess, but we're going to have to go away and review every aspect of what occurred so that we can take an honest look at ourselves too, to see where we fell short. And I'm not going to say that we didn't fall short in some spaces. We certainly may have, and we need to look at that.
Sure. I mean, like, if we just go back to the policies, like, there was a sense that you were a bit late to the party on things. There was the youth justice. There was also, like, the dental care. The Greens had already announced that. I mean, do you sense that Labor was slow off the blocks?
Well, I think that since Chippy came in, you know, he was very clear about reprioritisation, very clear about introducing policies even before the election that responded to the cost of living for New Zealanders, and then that was our primary focus going into the election. So actually, no, I wouldn't say that we were slow off the blocks, but I would say we can see when we look backwards already that really at the end of 2021, and many political commentators have cited this, that's when we started to see a slip down. We were never going to be able to retain the highs of the 2020 election. That's a given. But we certainly start to see it slip away at around the end of 2021, and we never really regained
But if you
ground.
had such foresight, or you had such warning from the end of 21, what else could you have done? For example, and this goes back to Chris Hipkins with his captain's call about wealth and CGT, should you have been bolder?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not going to put it down to policies at this point in time because I don't know if they would have changed the result, to be honest. And we haven't had a chance to retrospectively look at some of that stuff. I think it's important we have that conversation. In terms of, hindsight with 2021 and when things started to slip away at the end of 2021, hindsight is a nice thing, of course. And so we need to look forward now. We do need to review what happened, how this loss came to be, where we fell short as a political party, and what we need to do to rebuild. It's not the first time we've been in a position where we end up with only 34 MPs, though, Simon. I think 2011 was the case.
But you didn't come off an absolute majority that time.
Yeah, no, certainly didn't, and absolutely accept that.
Can we dive down into a bit of the nitty-gritty just right now in a couple of the areas where, surprisingly, Labor did get walloped? First of all, in South Auckland, you were relying on those polling booths to come out en masse, and they did not. So what happened to your massive support in South Auckland?
Well, again, this is where we're going to have to go away and ask some questions. And
you don't have any early ideas?
If I was to speculate right now, then I think that I'd be making my own assumptions, and that's not necessarily reflective of the constituents that live there. We do know that, I would say in Auckland, because I live in Auckland, and I'll say this, there is a frustration and a tiredness that's set in because of everything that we've experienced over recent years.
Especially the lockdown. You're talking about the lockdown?
The lengthened restrictions for lockdown, the weather events, and then certainly, when you see your local dairy getting, ram-raided, then of course, you're looking around and you're thinking, hang on a second, this doesn't make me feel very good and doesn't... and so it's a combination of things. And I think in Auckland we certainly felt that at a high level.
If you responded quicker to that last point that you raised, maybe you wouldn't have had such a drubbing in Auckland.
Look, I think there's certainly things that we need to look at, but I'm not going to resolve from the fact that we focused on wraparound supports for those young people and trying to address the social issues that impacted them and their whānau, because actually we have seen a reduction in ram raids because of that and less reoffending. But we can traverse this. It certainly doesn't help with the result that we faced.
And the other part of the result I want to look at, which is Labor's urban strongholds in Auckland, right? New Lynn, gone. Mount Roskill, gone. Te Atatu, Mount Albert, on the brink. Why did the middle-class Labor voters abandon you?
These are questions we have to ask, and so we'll certainly be going away and asking those questions. I don't want to make any assertions right now because then I'm preempting what we think the psyche of the voters were, and I think it's really important that we go out there and we find some of those answers directly from them rather than make them up.
In terms of Labor's understanding of the electorate and of the result, like Helen White in Mount Albert said this week that she did pretty damn well, but she's only holding on by a few hundred votes. That's not really an honest appraisal. Can we expect an honest appraisal from Labor?
Yeah, definitely, an honest appraisal. I think sometimes people are quick to look at individual seats and just to see where they won by a landslide or not. And what we need to also do is do that analysis around where party vote dropped, how much it dropped by. When the tide goes out, then you see that happen across the board. Some may have done better than others, but we haven't even had a chance to really analyse it.
And the tide has gone out in those urban central, and you've got some green sprouts coming through there, haven't you? You've got, Auckland Central, Wellington Central, possibly Rongotai. So the Greens are being are pulling in voters where you have lost them. Did they run the campaign, perhaps, where Labor didn't?
No, I think that if we look at the left bloc, unfortunately, we lost the vote. Really, it's not so much from my first glance at it anyway, that we have just lost a whole lot of vote to another left party. We actually didn't get some of the crucial undecided middle votes.
So you lost the centre.
But also, we didn't necessarily have our traditional vote turn out for us to the same extent. So there's a lot of considerations here, and I think think it's important that we do look at the range of considerations.
All right, so a few quick questions before we let you go. You're a senior minister for 6 years. What were you most proud of?
The changes that we made in the welfare system. Over $3 billion to lift benefits and reversing those Ruth Richardson cuts.
Right.
A range of other things in the welfare space, but even things like child support pass on. That's going to lift up to 14,000 children out of poverty. It was a hard thing to change and hadn't been touched, despite the fact it had been in place since 1936 and was discriminatory. But we did it. We had the courage and we did the work to do that. And that's indicative of only one of many changes that we undertook. Are you
concerned about National's policy about beneficiaries?
I absolutely am concerned. I also know that if they are going to turn that around for the 1st of April adjustments next year, they're going to have to do the legislation for that before Christmas. And so we quickly need to swing into opposition mode. I certainly will be, and I know my colleagues will be too. We will be coming out fighting and making sure New Zealand knows what they are losing with the changes that National are proposing.
OK. All right. What is your advice regarding Winston for National?
Look, I'm not going to give National advice for Winston. Good luck, though, because I do not know, and I'm not just saying this, how Luxon is going to manage David Seymour and Winston Peters, two people who can't seem to stand each other nor be in the same room with each other for any period of time. And I think it's going to be a very, very difficult coalition.
All right, then there's the process of renewal. So we have to just really quickly ask about that. Can you guarantee leadership will be sorted before Christmas?
I would be very surprised if it wasn't.
Right, OK.
Yeah.
Do you want to be Labor leader?
I don't have any ambitions to be the Labor leader. I want to be part of a strong Labor caucus, and I intend to stick around.
So caucus said to you, yes, Carmel
I don't have any intention to be Labor leader. However, I'll continue to support the caucus and provide whatever support they ask me to.
And can you guarantee that you're going to stick around for this whole term?
That's my intention, Simon. And actually, when I went into opposition last time, I didn't know what I was doing. This time round, I know a little bit more. So let's see how this goes.
Carmel Sepuloni, thank you very much for your time.